Warning: the following podcast contains graphic content that may be disturbing or triggering to some listeners. Discretion is advised. The Papa Tango Delta Sierra podcast is available free of charge thanks to the support of Cracked Armor. Their mission is to raise awareness for PTSD, TBI, and mental health to support those who struggle. By creating an army of warriors who represent the gear, their hope is that it will send the message to others that they are not alone. Go to crackedarmor.com, say hi to Mark Long, read about the story, find some research information about PTSD, and support the cause by buying some gear.
(10-9) Did you say Papa Tango Sierra Delta? 10-4.
There's so much left to do, so many things I wanna say, and I say, don't make the change. If it rains every single day, I'll fight to blow it all away.
This is episode 10 of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. My name is Larry Payton, and I have been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress. One of the most difficult things I had to come to grips with early in my diagnosis was trying to understand why in the hell I was struggling when so many other people had it worse than me. My psychologist kept telling me that's not the way it works, but it didn't really come through to me at all. It just didn't come through. I mean, I've never been deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia. Everything I've done has been here, within Canada. Well, I did have some things to deal with in the States and in Jamaica, but I'll talk about that at another time. Regardless, it's not like any of those places are like Afghanistan, Bosnia during the war, nothing like Iraq. So I just felt really guilty. I felt full of shame. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? It took a lot of sessions for my psychologist to start breaking down that wall and to understand that trauma affects different people in different ways, and even the definition of trauma can be different for different people. I still felt kind of shitty. I would hold others who are struggling in much higher esteem than I'd ever hold myself. Then I had some conversations with some people I'd met who were from the military, who were deployed to Bosnia, to Afghanistan, to Iraq. And I spoke my mind. I told them, yeah, man, I'm struggling too. I've got CPTSD as well. But man, I can't imagine what you went through. I almost feel like a fucking shitbag for actually going through this compared to what you did. The response I got from a few of them was remarkable, and I really wasn't expecting it. One of them said, you know, I always feel guilty when I compare myself to you guys. He said, I get sent over for tours that usually last 8 months, but then I get a break in between. I get to come down. I get to work through some shit. I don't have to be there all the time. But he said, this was your life 24/7. You never got to leave your war zone, and you will never get to leave your war zone. It's truth. It fucking resonated the shit out of me. Speaking to another military member recently, a retired vet, having this conversation just in terms of my respect for what he had been through, he said the same thing back to me. He had a lot of respect for what I'd been through. His comment was, when I left Afghanistan, they took us to a tropical place for a period of time to decompress, calm down, and get used to being back into somewhat of a normal world. He said, I don't understand how you come home after 12 hours and then are expected to immediately flip a switch and be dad, be a husband. And then 12 hours later, flip the switch back on and go out and do your job. What's my point? Don't compare your experiences that's caused your PTSD to the experiences of others. You can't compare them. There is no comparison. This is not a piss and match of who's gone through the worst fucking trauma. It's about trauma. And though I sometimes still struggle big time with what the fuck is wrong with me because others have had it worse, I really am working at pulling myself away from any thoughts of comparison, because I know I experienced trauma and I know others have as well. And what that trauma is really doesn't matter. It's not about one being worse than the other. It's not about someone's PTSD being more difficult than someone else's. It's that we're all together. We've all experienced it. And we're all trying to deal with it now. Let's take a quick break.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you have experience with post-traumatic stress and would like to join me for an episode, please reach out to me. You can contact me via direct message on Instagram, PTSD_podcast, or you can send me an email at Papa Tango Sierra Delta Podcast @gmail.com. Cheers.
We are back from the break. Thank you very much for staying tuned to the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. On today's show, I would like to introduce retired Royal Newfoundland Constabulary member, Kelsey Muise. Kelsey, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Larry, for having me.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this one. We'd spoken maybe a month ago, and some things happened in between that time, which we're going to bring up today. However, you've managed to bounce back as well, and I'm so freaking proud of that. Let's just start off with, please tell everyone about you, about your background, and about your journey.
First of all, I want to just thank you for not only having me, but for creating this platform. I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing. You're reaching so many people, and just props to you. So I just want to
I appreciate that. Thank
put
you.
that out there.
Thank you.
I feel very happy to be here today. Finally, like you said, we spoke about a month ago, and something had come up in between the time and now, which kind of prevented me from speaking to you, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But I guess before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself and just tell people who I am. I am originally from Sydney, Nova Scotia, so I'm a Cape Bretoner. I went to the Atlantic Police Academy in PEI in 2002 at the age of 19 years old. Graduated from the police academy in May of 2003. After that, I then worked for Charlottetown Police Department as a summer police cadet. After that, I applied to work with Cape Breton Regional Police, and they weren't hiring. As a result of that, I kind of just applied everywhere and anywhere because I wanted to work. I was accepted here at the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, and I moved here in September of that same year. I didn't know anyone. I moved here with everything that I owned in my parents' 1992 Buick Regal that they gave me.
Nice.
So obviously at 19 years old, I was just getting my wings, and I just moved here, had a car, got the apartment, and just kind of started out like that. Went to work and absolutely loved my job. I was put on patrol with a coach officer for my first 3 months. And it was a huge transition moving here, obviously, from Sydney. So it was a lot of phone calls home that I wanted to go home, and that I didn't think that I could stay here or do this job. But then as the years passed, of course, I met a lot of people and I got a lot of experience, and I started to like my job and love my job even more and more. So here we are, 19 years later, I'm still here in Newfoundland. I'm not an RNC officer anymore. So over the years of my career, when I first started, I was on patrol, spent about 5 years on patrol. And from there, I worked in child abuse, sexual assault unit. From there, I worked in major crime, and I worked in the investigative interviewing unit. I worked in drug section for 3.5, 4 years undercover. So I kind of dabbled in a lot of different areas of policing.
You brought a lot of experience to the table there, Kelsey. I mean, that's amazing. That's a lot of different jobs.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The one part, so when I left, I was working with the mounted unit, but I'll get to that. The one piece that I enjoyed the most, I think, was the interviewing unit, because I got to interview people from all different walks of life and all different experiences. So not only was I interviewing victims of tragic crimes, but sometimes I was interviewing suspects, sometimes I was interviewing accused. It was a tough job, but it was a job that I think that I was good at. I had a lot of training, and it was very rewarding. At the same time, that was probably the position that took the most out of me. I'll back it up a bit. In July of 2015, I was diagnosed with PTSD. There wasn't a specific event that triggered my PTSD. I would say it's more of an accumulation of the calls, as you know, all the different types of things that we see that I don't really need to list. But a lot of the trauma that I witnessed was vicarious trauma. That had a major impact on me. So I go back to talk about the interviewing unit and hearing people's stories on like the absolute worst days of their lives, hearing victims of sexual assault, and then interviewing the suspects and accused that committed these crimes and having to, almost be their buddy so that you built that rapport with them. Like I said, I enjoyed that section, but I do feel that that did take its toll on me over time. I'm going to say around 2008. So I joined in 2003. I think 2008, 2009, I would say that I started to notice a difference in myself, and probably other people started to notice a difference as well. I just took it as the fact that I was in my early 20s or late 20s by that point, and that I was kind of free on my own. So I was drinking a lot, I was out partying a lot, I was spending a lot of money. But then that led to not only a weekend thing, it led into on my 4 days off, I would drink on all those nights. And then it led into picking up a bottle of wine on my way home from a shift. It just kept increasing, and my level of alcohol use became very unhealthy. And people started noticing, and people would bring it to my attention. And I didn't like that because I didn't think that there was anything wrong with me.
Yep.
I thought the last thing I thought was wrong with me was my career. I just thought that I was being a regular 20-year-old. It wasn't until, I guess, around 2015, 2014 that I hit a wall. At that time, I was working in the investigative interviewing unit, and I realized that I had had enough. And at that time, I asked to leave Criminal Investigation Division and to go back to Street Patrol because I felt like I needed a break. And the white shirts at that time didn't want to release me from CID. So that was a bit of a fight. Like I said, I feel like I was good at my job and I was doing good work. And you know what happens to the people that do good work? They tend to get piled up more and more with files, and they didn't want me to leave. Essentially, I had to fight to get put back on Street Patrol, which I did eventually in January of 2015. And then in July of 2015, I was at a particular call on Street Patrol. I wouldn't even say it was a quote traumatic call, like it was a tough call, but it was like your regular call, a domestic or something. And I remember just hitting a wall that night and saying, I can't do this anymore. And I was around 11 o'clock. I came in, I parked my patrol car. I walked into my supervisor's desk. He wasn't there. I laid the keys on the desk and I left a note that said, put me off sick. I went and put my firearm and everything away. I went and changed my clothes and I walked out. And I remember calling my best friend from my car that night and just being so upset, crying, bawling, this huge release, and just saying, like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. She said to me, I think it's time that you tap out. And I'll never forget those words.
Yeah.
And I said, like, I think that you're right. And I thought I only needed like a week or two off.
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
I got to tap out for, a week or two and then everything will be fine. But the week and two turned into a month, turned into a couple months, turned into 3 months. And then I tried to return to work in September of that year. So I went off diagnosed July, tried to return in September. The accommodation process was not good. Again, you're talking to, I'm just going to refer to them as white shirts, people that didn't understand. And their answer to my accommodation was to put me on traffic duty. And that was never an issue for me, but it was almost paralyzing when I went back to work in September. And that was my job, was to stop vehicles and to give out tickets. I can remember stopping a few vehicles. I don't even think I ever spoke about this before, but I just remember stopping a few vehicles late at night and my hypervigilance being on complete bust. almost like shaking when I was walking up to the car and going back to my vehicle. And I'm like, I remember driving away from these vehicle stops and being like, who is this person? Like, I am not the same person that I was 3 months ago when I went off work.
Yeah.
Like, what happened to me?
Right.
I was back to work for 2 weeks and then I went off again. I was off for 18 months.
Looking back, Kels, I mean, do you think that because this is a common thing and this is a place I'm sitting in right now, you know,
Yeah.
that we try to force it back, that we think we're okay and we shouldn't be going back so early? And I guess the other question I have for you, Kels, is was it because you went back that much harder to feel good again?
Yeah, like, I don't know what I expected. I think I expected taking the 3 months off was going to cure me, and that was enough time. And I think it obviously depends on the individual, and it depends on where you're at in your recovery. For me, that obviously was not enough time. However, I do think that if the accommodation process had been handled better, I could have eased back into the role better
Gotcha. Yeah.
instead of just being given a set of keys and being told that this is your area, go give out tickets, go stop vehicles. Not all traffic stops are straightforward, as you know.
No.
Some of them can be quite triggering. So it just wasn't the ideal spot for me. And the managers didn't listen to that. So that led me to go off again. And like I said, I was off for 18 months. And within that time frame, I ended up going to Homewood in Guelph, Ontario.
Right.
I went there for the PTSR program. So I went there in December of 2016 and I left in February. And then again, it's like I just said, going to Homewood, I thought that was going to be the cure. I thought that I was going to get out of there and everything was going to be fine. I was feeling better, of course, and talking to like minded people there at the hospital, people that had been through similar experiences and not so similar experiences, but just having a community of people that understood what was going on, no matter what our backgrounds were, was amazing. And I met some amazing people. But when I left there, coming home was hard because I felt like I was coming back to the place and the things that had caused my trauma.
Yeah, like the scene of the crime. It's like you're returning to the scene of the crime.
Yeah. I was good for a little while. And then in June, I ended up in hospital locally. And that's what I thought my rock bottom was, Larry. During all of this, now keep in mind, I was off work with no pay.
Right.
I was denied workers' compensation.
Wow.
I was fighting with long-term disability. I had a lawyer fighting for my long-term disability. I was getting letters weekly saying, what you have submitted is not enough. We need more.
So you were getting no pay. Nothing.
I was getting no pay. Like I had used all my sick leave. I had used all my annual leave. I had used all my stat time.
Jesus.
I was completely out. My boyfriend, who's now my husband at the time, he was working, thank God, but we had only just gotten together. I had a house. I had to sell my house, and he and I moved into an apartment together.
Wow.
And it was just a really bad situation.
Well, I mean, you're struggling already, Kelsey, and then
Yes.
to add to it, there's just, okay, I've had difficulties in my life, there's no doubt, one of which when I came out of university and trying to get my first jobs as a kid was financial stress. I accumulated a shit ton of student loans. They were calling all the time. How am I going to pay them off? My point is, financial stress is fucking stress enough.
Brutal.
But now you're adding financial stress onto a person who is already severely injured by a multitude of traumatic events.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it was a lot. In June, I can remember weekly I was getting letters saying, you know, you're denied, or we need this from your doctors and we need that from this doctor. And by this time, I feel like I had given them everything that they wanted. I mean, I was seeing psychologists, psychiatrists, my doctor. I had been to Homewood. They had all that documentation. I felt like I wasn't being heard, that they didn't believe me, that I was making this up. I remember getting this letter from the insurance company, and it was kind of like the final straw for me that day. I got the letter, I read it, and I was like, I can't fucking do this anymore. And I went out to my kitchen and I went into the cupboard, and I had taken some of my prescription medication I took several clonazepam and Ativan. I went back into my bedroom and lied down, and my boyfriend was actually sat at the kitchen table, and he didn't see what had happened. I just did it, and then I went back and laid down. While I was lying there, I thought, oh shit, what the hell did I just do? I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to end. I just wanted
Yeah.
to get a goddamn break. Like I felt like everyone and everything was against me, and I couldn't get better, and these people weren't helping me, and no one was listening. And I just felt in that moment that I just needed the pain to go away. And at that moment, that's all that I could think of to do.
Yeah.
I took the pills, and then I went out and told Keith that what I had done. And he said, obviously we're going to have to take you to the hospital. Then again, this comes down to another experience that was tough, because not only did I do this, but then I had to get brought to the Waterford Hospital, which is where I had taken people during my career for years for either mental health issues or for taking meds or for anything like that. And here I was being dropped off there. However, they wouldn't take me because I had ingested medication. So then we had to call in the ambulance, and the ambulance then escorted me to St. Clair's Hospital. I was checked over there. Luckily, I didn't take enough to have any procedures done or my stomach pumped or anything.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah.
After I was cleared from St. Clair's, I went back to the Waterford Hospital, and that's, for listeners not from here, that's our psychiatric assessment unit. And I spent 4 or 5 days there, I believe, in a room that was brutal, but it was where I needed to be. Once I left there, thankfully, they brought me to the Health Sciences Center, which has a psychiatric unit, and they gave me a private room, which was much needed because there was a lot of people on that unit. And obviously, with St. John's being small, people know each other here.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I was embarrassed. I just really wanted to focus on my healing journey. Being there for 3 weeks in the Health Sciences Center, I would say, was probably the biggest part of my healing journey. It was hard, but it was 3 solid weeks in a hospital room of me reflecting and writing and journaling and reading and just having a break. And it's funny, Larry, because 2 weeks after that, after I got released from hospital, I got a call from the insurance company that I was approved.
Unreal.
You can't help but think it took me almost trying to end my life
Yeah.
for them to
Actually believe you.
actually, take me seriously.
That's absolutely
Which is
horrifying.
fucked.
Like, that's
Yeah.
absolutely horrifying that we're being pushed that far just to have someone believe us. And I mean,
Yeah.
it could very easily have been that you had taken too many and
Mm-hmm.
didn't go out and mention to Keith. I mean, things could have gone so much the other way because the additional pain from financial issues, despite everything you were trying to do.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
When I was approved, so my financial issues were, I wouldn't say solved, but they definitely gotten better. And so then I felt like I was able to concentrate on my healing and on my recovery finally. That's what I did for the next, I think, 6 months. I stayed off. And then I went back to work again in February of 2018. That's when I went to the Mountie unit. And that saved my career for the next 4 years.
When we come back from the break, we'll find out what saved Kelsey's career for 4 years anyway. A big event that recently happened that caused a lot of stress and pain, and her program to help. Stay tuned. This episode of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast is brought to you thanks to the support and financial sponsorship of Cracked Armor. Go to crackedarmor.com, read the story, buy the gear, wear it to send a message to others who are struggling that they're not alone. Also to Willow Tree Farms, care of Jason Sobkowicz, another member who is struggling with PTSD and who updates his Instagram frequently to share his story. You can follow him at jason.sobkowicz. We are back from the break. Thank you for sticking around for the remainder of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. Returning with retired Royal Newfoundland Constabulary member Kelsey Muise. Kelsey, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so very much for what you've shared thus far. It's absolutely astounding, but just very transparent. It hurts me to hear what you've gone through. I mean, I'm so very proud that you're still here to tell your story.
Thanks so much, Larry. I really appreciate your compassion and empathy. And I know that there's so many other people out there that can relate. And that's why I speak out and try to get my story across so that people know that they're not alone.
Awesome. And I thank you so much for that and for having the courage to join the podcast today. So tell us about what happened that saved your career, but only for a short amount of time.
I am a huge, huge, huge animal lover. I have always loved animals since I was a child. My parents would tell you that I used to bring home stray dogs and cats, and I always bugged for animals. I specifically loved horses, and unfortunately, we didn't have the capabilities, I guess, growing up, as it's quite an expensive thing for me to be involved in horses. But I always was in awe of horses as a kid and growing up. I often wrote about them. I would go visit them wherever I could. A couple friends of mine had horses, so I would hang out at their barns. Wherever I could see a horse, I was there. We have a mounted unit at the RNC. It was never a unit that I ever really had my sights set on. I guess I always was in those investigative roles. It just so happened that a vacancy had opened up in the mounted unit in February of 2018 or January, I believe. And that was roughly around the same time that I was looking at coming back to work. The chief of police at the time, who's no longer the chief of police, he obviously plays a huge part in this because he knew a bit about my story. He took the time to sit down with me, and I spoke to him candidly about my return to work attempts in the past and everything that I had been through. He was grasping my love of animals, and he knew of this vacancy coming up. And he thought, well, I think this might be the perfect fit for you. So I think that this is what we should do. I think that we should give it a try, and you should go down there. So that was the start of it. Again, I had no experience with horses other than what I had just told you about being in awe of them growing up. I started going down to the barn 3 days a week. So I would go down on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on my return to work. So that was about 4 hours a day. So it was a gradual return to work, which is what it should have been before. I was paired with a senior officer at the time, and all I was doing was mucking out stalls and being in the company of these huge, magnificent beasts, loving absolutely every minute of it. I had to be told that my 4 hours was up and that I had to go home.
Wow.
I can't say enough. Like, I felt like, you know, when you first go to the police academy and you have like that feeling of like starting fresh and feeling amazing, and
Yep.
that's the way I felt. Like, I went down there and I was like, I felt like I was starting brand new again. I felt like a brand new me. I felt like I found my niche.
Yeah.
I just felt alive, and I looked forward to going every single day. For the first 6 months down there, I shoveled shit with a smile on my face, and it was so good. And then I had the opportunity to go away to Toronto to train under the Toronto Mounted Unit. They usually put off a full course every January, but they weren't putting one off till the following January. However, they made an exception for me, and they said if I could come up for 2 months, it would be one-on-one training with the main trainer, Sergeant Chris McCarthy. And let me tell you, I've been a fitness fanatic my whole life. I've always worked out. I went to mounted unit training and I felt muscles I never felt in my life.
Wow.
It is so tough riding a horse. And I'm guilty for it too. I thought people just sat up there and, you know, steered with the reins and they didn't do a whole lot of work. But
Yeah.
wow, was I wrong. And I didn't live far from there, from where I was doing my training. But there was days that I had to get GO train to go home because like I couldn't walk.
Wow. I'm like the guy who's like, you just sit in a saddle. What's so difficult about that?
Yeah, no.
No.
No, it is a lot. It was probably the best 2 months of my life or of my career for sure.
Right.
Definitely. I
Awesome.
learned so much. I met so many amazing people. And again, it was just such a positive environment. It was stressful learning a new skill at, well, the age of 36, learning how to ride a horse. So most of these people have been riding their whole lives. Most people start when they're a kid,
Yep.
which is what I would recommend because those muscles probably won't hurt as much. Yeah, so I was there for 2 months. I came back and then I graduated in July. We did like a graduation ceremony ride, and my family came and my friends came, and oh my God, it was incredible. So then I was officially a member of the mounted unit. So I could go on patrol, I could do what the regular members did because I had this training. And so that's what I did until I retired, until September 2022.
I remember going around St. John's. So, I mean, you know, I'm born and raised in St. John's. I only left for
Yeah.
university, and then when I got shipped off to depot later in my 20s. But whenever you saw the RNC members on horseback, and there would be two of them,
Yeah.
it just drew attention from everywhere. People loved it. And it was such a great image for the police force because I could give a shit what your background or what your thoughts were of the police. At the very least, you were astounded at the size, strength, and beauty of those horses. And so it just seems to be such a positive, much needed reflection on a police force. And to see you up there doing it just had to be amazing.
It's funny, Larry, because when I was off work, obviously for the long period of time, I packed everything away and couldn't look at my uniforms. I couldn't look at the badge. It turned my stomach. But when I joined the mounted unit and came back to work in that capacity, I was proud again to put on my dress uniform or my regular uniform for that matter and go on patrol and do events and engage with people. It was just,
You're reinvigorated, completely reinvigorated.
yeah,
And
yes,
proud again is the
yes,
biggest thing I'm going to say.
yes,
Because
proud.
proud, I mean, because when we leave, you know, you leave the academy, I leave depot, you're filled with pride. And the
Yes.
unfortunate reality is, I don't want to say this for everybody, but I certainly can say it for myself, and it seems to be the same with you. That shine starts wearing off as you get worn down. And
Absolutely.
it just comes to, you know, there's almost just the pride is gone, but there's almost a little bit of disdain. And
Mhm.
I know, I can only imagine what that felt like for you, but I know just in my couple of months off now that I'm already thinking better of my employer than I did before, just because there's more clarity, because I've had a time to take a break to get myself back to a safe place. And so I can only imagine what that must have done for you to once again just want to put on the uniform that, as you said, turned your stomach to even look at.
It was an amazing feeling to get back to that. I never in a million years thought that I would get back there. I thought my career was over back when I left, when I had been in hospital.
I mean, I have to ask, Kelsey, because this is what doesn't make any sense. And for any listener who's tuned into the podcast, and I appreciate that you are, but you go, okay, Kelsey, you got back to a point that you felt pride, you felt reinvigorated, you felt like a kid again getting out of the academy and just piss and vinegar. So why in 4 years did you leave?
Oh my. Unfortunately, I felt invigorated and I had changed and I had healed and I had did the work, but the system doesn't change and the culture doesn't change. And I'm talking about internally. We don't have control over the way we're treated, obviously, but I felt like, and it wasn't immediately, maybe because I was on such a high, but I felt like I was treated as, and I know this, actually, I shouldn't say I felt because I know this because rumor mill. I was given special treatment because of my mental illness. I was given that position at the mounted unit. I was fed with a silver spoon, and that started to tear me down and had other members and the public, some public members, looking at me like differently, if that makes sense. It wore down my self-confidence. It wore down that pride that I started to feel. I spoke about the chief that had allowed me that position, once that chief left, then priorities changed. Let's just say that I wasn't, not only myself, but other individuals that had been accommodated properly were left thrown to the wolves.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it, because it's hard to believe that these people that you looked at as like your brothers and sisters and this family that you join into would turn their backs like that. But I don't know, Larry, I don't know if it was like, I don't want to say jealousy. I don't know what it was. If it was the expectation that they thought I would fail again and I didn't. And because I was so successful, and because I did well at the mounted unit training, and because I was breaking down barriers and started up the equine therapy program, and I was bringing this attention to the RNC, this new light, this new way of doing things. And a lot of people don't like change. And a lot of people didn't think that I had a right to be speaking openly about PTSD, and think that I should just shut up, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what happened. All I know is that over time it just beat me down, and then it just got more and more obvious that I was being targeted. I was being harassed. I was being gaslighted. It was to the point where I had to make the decision to leave, or I was going to end up in the hospital again.
And this was all internal. This is not
All internal.
all internal.
Yes.
From the brothers and sisters
Yes.
that should have your six.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's disheartening.
It is. And it's wild because so many of these people I either joined with, or they joined after me, or they only had a couple years ahead of me. We worked together and we got along well. And then all of a sudden they get white shirts and they just become completely different people. And they'll do what they're told, no matter what, for the sake of a promotion, and treat people disrespectfully because they want that promotion. It's really sad.
That is very sad. I mean, it's a true leader, in my opinion, is one who takes care of his or her troops. By troops, I mean anyone who's working underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
I know my personal management style. I believe it is my duty to make their job as easy and as doable as I possibly can, and keep shit that they don't need away from them, to be the umbrella. Now, that's definitely caused me some issues over the years. I know that. But that's just, to me, what a leader is supposed to do. I mean, you're getting extra pay and extra responsibilities for a reason. So lead. And
Absolutely.
you're saying that it sounds like the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Wow. So you have to step away from the RNC, because otherwise you're spiraling down that hole again.
Yeah. So I went off work in February of 2022 because it just got to that point again, the I can't take this anymore point. And then I just knew that that was it. I knew I couldn't go back. And some things had happened while I was off that really made me realize I couldn't go back. Some big knives were driven in my back, and I said, I can't be a part of this anymore. September 30th, 2022, I officially medically retired with 19 years. So obviously it's not a full pension. So right now I'm on disability and my pension. And I'm not sure what the future holds, but we'll see, I guess.
Wow.
But I had to close the chapter with policing for sure.
I mean, I'm sitting here, Kelsey, and I'm not saying anything because I'm fucking speechless.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to tell you though, so I skipped like a big chunk of the good part. So I got pulled down that rabbit hole, right? When I was in the mounted unit, we started to implement equine assisted therapy. And this goes back to helping individuals that have either mental health issues, addictions, trauma, anything like that. And not only were we looking at helping our fellow first responders, but we were looking at helping the vulnerable population in our community. So we did, I say we, so I should tell you, I did training to become an equine specialist. And then there's a mental health professional. And the model that we follow is called the EGALA model. All that means basically is that it's a very high accredited model. It's not just equine assisted therapy that people can come and pet the horses. It's an actual facilitated program where there is a trained social worker, there's a trained equine specialist, and then there's a horse, and there's an actual method to our madness. So we ran, myself and Rhonda Fyander, she owns Avalon Equestrian Center, and her and I kind of teamed up with the huge support of the chief of police. We started to facilitate programs within the community with our horses. Also, we started running retreats for first responders. And that was going very strongly for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, pretty much the whole time I was in the mounted unit. Until, like I said, the manager changed. And then I guess these programs weren't worthwhile anymore and put a stop to it. The programs were so supported and the feedback that we received from everyone was so positive. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about the actual H.E.L.P program and what I'm trying to do now, even though I'm not in the force, because I still think that it's such a much needed program that any first responder could avail of.
Absolutely. It's funny because, as I mentioned before we started recording, I just last week received a poster that said H.E.L.P on it, and it was involving a lady by the name of Kelsey Muise. But it wasn't sent to me by you, it was sent to me by someone else.
That's amazing.
Tell us about the program.
The H.E.L.P program stands for Heroes Equine Learning Program, and it was originally started in Ottawa. It's a 4-day retreat, or 3.5 days, we'll say. All of the funding is provided by private donors and community supporters. Participants, they only have to pay a $150 registration cost. And that's more or less to get that commitment from the person. But everything is included for those 4 days. So your meals and your accommodations are included. Obviously, if you're coming from out of province, you'd have to get here. But once you're here, everything is covered. And this is a charitable organization as well. It's for military service members, first responders, active and or retired, and their families affected by PTSD and operational stress injuries. What we do is, well, first of all, I guess some people are like, why horses? So if you haven't spent any time with horses or you haven't done any type of therapy like this, horses are animals that are preyed upon in the wild. So they, by nature, have what we call a sixth sense. So they're hypervigilant. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
The sixth sense allows them, because of this hypervigilance and because of this sixth sense, they understand energy and emotions, and that's what they go by. The energy and the emotions is kind of hidden in us humans. We try to hide that and use our nonverbal communication. But horses can pick up on that. Horses demand that you be congruent. So that means they don't care if you're angry, if you're pissed off, if you're sad, if you are happy or anxious. They don't care. They just want you to own that. They don't want you to come into the ring and be anxious as heck, but be put on this mask and this brave face, because they will call you out somehow. It's absolutely incredible what happens in these sessions. During a session or an activity, when the participants go into the arena or go into the outdoor environment, the horse may not represent a horse anymore. And it kind of sounds a little woo-woo. And a lot of times people, like, you have to almost do it to get it. And I think that might be what's holding some people back from trying it. But during an activity, like, the horse could represent a spouse. It could represent an addiction. It could represent a flashback or your child. So by working with the horses, it creates a safe space to have experiences, and like, you create these metaphors. You don't have to explain anything to the horses. You don't have to sit across from them. It's not talk therapy. You don't even have to say anything to us as facilitators. Like, we're there. I'm there to make sure that the individual is safe with the horse, and Rhonda's there to make sure that the mental health is in a good place, because obviously things can come up. During these sessions, the horses allow the client to make their own interpretations. The client is in the driver's seat. So it's not like ask them question, answer. It's go out there and just be. And by being with the horses, there's no judgment, there's no expectation, and it is just magic. Honestly, it's magic to watch. It's been proven by study after study that horses can connect with humans and can help with this type of work, with these types of injuries. And that's why I'm so passionate about it and why I still want to continue it, even though it's not with the RNC. So right now it will be up at Avalon Equestrian Center with Rhonda Finder and I, with her 9 horses. It'll just look a little bit different, but essentially it'll be the same process, the same retreats that we have allowed in the past.
I would say that it sounds very, very hooey. I'm like, okay, hold on a second. I get along great with my dogs and they make me feel better to pet them, but I'm not really sure they're reading me. However, this past weekend at the show, we did the home show at the Cracked Armor booth, and the number of people that came up and just spoke to me about their experience with equine therapy was unreal. Absolutely unreal. Unbelievable. Look, they say the exact same thing as you were saying. I don't know how, don't necessarily get it, but horses can read through your bullshit. They can see you more than anyone else can. You can't hide it from them. And so then the relationship that's formed with the horse is apparently just magical. It's just absolutely amazing. And Mark Long himself speaks about it when he did the Save a Warrior program in California, that equine therapy was unbelievable. So, Kelsey, anyone who's listening to this and sort of going, this is hooey, you need to get your head out your ass, because it's not. This is real deal. Kelsey, how do people join the program? When do you offer the program? Where is the program? Give us the details, because I'm not going to lie, I am very interested in doing the program and I would love to attend.
That would be amazing. The program, we haven't been able to fill. We were supposed to have a session last fall. We were unable to fill the seats. Oh, and I should also mention that it's only a small group that attends. The maximum would be 8 people. So you would spend 4 days at a retreat with 6 to 8 other people. They're all, like I said, in the same peer-based type community, because we all have these similar backgrounds. And I actually did the retreat myself in Ottawa before I brought it here. I can definitely attest to the power of it. It is held here in Conception Bay South at Avalon Equestrian Center. The participants stay at a local Airbnb. Even if you live around the corner, it's a requirement that you stay at the Airbnb. That's for safety and also just for the integrity of the program. We want to immerse you in the environment and in the program, and we don't want you to have to worry about going home and making supper or going and picking your son up at hockey or whatever. We want you to be immersed in these 3.5 days.
Here's why you can't go home. Because you don't heal between the hours of 8 and 4 and then be done.
Exactly. Yeah. But the days are long. You arrive Sunday evening and then the program starts Monday morning and we all eat together. So myself and Rhonda are with the participants from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. We're there. We do other activities as well outside of the equine sessions. There's an equine session in the morning and in the afternoon. But then in between that, there's like mind-body breaks, there's mindful activities, all kinds of different stuff, and nothing to be worried about. Like it's nothing that you need to know how to do. I have a yoga certification and meditation, so I mean, I'll run through some different things for relaxation exercises, sort of things like that. We'll go for like walk together and that kind of thing. Like it's nothing too out there. We'll do lunch and we'll do supper. And then the evening time is like an evening social for the participants. And when I say social, obviously there's no booze allowed or no recreational drugs. we found that the participants really loved this time together because they were able to sit down together, most times in the kitchen, shooting the shit, talking about the day. And some people just made some really strong connections. So that's what each day kind of looks like, with small differences. And we wrap up things on Thursday around noon, and then you're free to go on home. So it's Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and then we're finished on Thursday at noon. To get more information and to register, the participant has to go to help-ptsd.com. That'll bring you to a website, and that's where the retreat application process is. For the application, all you need is just some basic details, obviously, about yourself. And we want to make sure that the individual's in a good place to attend something like this. So Rhonda asks that the individual gets a note from a doctor to say that, yes, my patient is in a good place mentally to attend such an event. If anyone wants more information, they can check it out at info@help-ptsd.com. All the information mostly is on the website, but all the exact details about the specific retreat, you can email for that. But the next one is actually May. So the deadline to apply is April the 15th, and the day is May the 7th until May the 11th. We would love to fill it. We would love for anyone to apply. If anybody has any questions or any hesitancies, Larry, if they reach out to you, you can put them in touch with me. Because I know that it's uncomfortable, and I know that it's a step outside the box, and it's not your traditional talk therapy, but a lot of times that's what we need. And I should only speak for myself, but I know that once I stepped outside my comfort zone and did something that I wasn't used to, then that's where big changes happened. And I've gotten so much feedback from other members that were really nervous coming into the retreat, hesitant, even afraid of horses, that left with so much healing that they couldn't even put it into words. I really think that it's an amazing opportunity, and would love to help anyone that's willing to put themselves out there and try it out.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And for people who are unable, for whatever reason, to make it or to participate, is there a way they can help? Do you guys accept donations at all? Is there any other way people can get involved?
Yes, it's all funded through community donors and through private donors, community support. So it's all funded through donations. Once you visit the website, there is an option to donate. And like I said, it is a charitable organization, so you can get a charitable receipt. So if you're not interested in attending but want to donate, that would be amazing as well, because of course we can't have these retreats unless we have money. Luckily, we have some money in our account to have this retreat in May, and then we'll start fundraising again for the next one.
There you go. And I'm going to put a challenge out, and so I'll get you, Kelsey, to let me know. But
Okay.
I'm going to challenge people who are listening to this that if you're thinking about going, but you're not sure, that you reach out to me, and if you go, I'll go.
Haha, love it.
We'll see if we can't get this retreat filled up.
That would be so cool. That would be amazing.
That's the go. So, all right, we're going to see. But if you commit to me, you best commit to me, because I will track you down, and I will drag your ass out there. So I'm just saying. Kelsey,
Yeah.
Before we end off, and I want to end off on a good note, although I know we're going to hit a bit of a shitty point right now, because we did mention earlier about you and I talking a little over a month ago, and something happened in between. And so just anyone who follows me on Instagram would have seen that I shared a news article. I shared a link to a CBC story where Kelsey came out and actually talked, had the nerve to talk. And that's a big thing, because, I mean, people will say to me, hey, man, I'm amazed at your strength. I can't believe you can talk about these things, which I agree. I love it. There's times I don't know what the hell I'm doing talking about this stuff. But you actually spoke to CBC about it. I'm just going to read an excerpt from it. This is something that I shared on my page, and this is from CBC. And it says, mental illness is not being treated appropriately, Muise said, and she fears for the officers who remain on the job. And they quote you, I knew that I was going to have hard, tough calls. I knew there was going to be trauma, and I knew that there was going to be things that I did not want to witness, Muise said of her career as a police officer. Quote again, but I did not think that one of my biggest opponents was going to be my employer. That's amazing. And that's deep. And that's really stepping up and speaking out. However, though there was some positive feedback, there was also some negative. Tell us about that.
Oh, I knew that there would be negativity just because of the internet, but I don't think I expected it to affect me as much as it did. And by bringing up all of the past shit, especially the stuff that I had been through with management and with the internal politics, it had a really rough impact on me. And after that interview, Larry, I like hit another. I mean, recovery is not linear, so every day obviously isn't a good day, but it was a rough week. I was in bed, I would say, for a week after that interview. It was rough, and I don't regret doing it. I thought it was important to open up, be vulnerable, and tell the community that this is what's happening behind the walls of our police forces. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows and let's put a hat on and have a coffee break for mental health and for Bell Let's Talk Day and we support our members. It's not that. And it was infuriating watching it, especially since I retired. And I thought, you know what? I have a voice now. I can speak because you can't speak when you're in there. And I said, I am going to tell my truth. I'm going to tell my story. And that's what I did. It was hard, but I don't regret it. Lately, I've been thinking, like, where did that even get me? What did it even do? What did it accomplish? Those thoughts. And I guess I don't know if I'll ever know what it accomplished and what it did and if it did anything. But it helped me with my recovery to get the truth out there and to let people know whether or not they choose to believe it or not is their choice. But I needed to say my piece.
Well, I want to tell you that it meant something to me.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for being such a fucking warrior and standing up to speak out, to say what a lot of people are afraid to say, and just truly hoping there's change to take care of everybody who works in policing or other first responders, other jobs in general. That mental health is a huge issue and it needs to be paid attention to, and there needs to be programs or opportunities, whatever, instilled within the organization. There needs to be patience, there needs to be compassion, there needs to be honesty, there needs to be love.
Mm-hmm.
We're all human and we're all trying to do this together. Why can't we actually do it together then? And that's the key. And I feel that's the word you put out, Kels. That's at least what I took from it. It was amazing that you did that. It really was amazing you did that. I will forever be grateful to people like you who have really stepped out and put their neck on the line to help everyone else.
Thank you.
Kelsey, before we end off, is there anything else that you would like to add? Anything else that you would like to say? This is your time.
No, I just think more like what you said. It's so important just to keep this conversation going. When I went to the police academy 19 years ago, no one talked to us about mental health. No one talked to us about stress injuries or anything like that. They taught us how to defensive tactics. They taught us those types of things, but no one ever spoke to me about mental health and the warning signs. And I'm just so grateful for this podcast and for things that are happening now that are making and allowing people to open up and talk more, because it's going to allow the next generation to recognize the signs and symptoms, I believe, and hopefully to get the help a lot sooner than I did. I just want to say, like, thank you again for this podcast and for what you're doing. It is like, I don't know, it's hands down like one of the best things that I've seen, and I just want to thank you so much for putting yourself out there and taking the time to help other people.
Thanks, Kelsey. You just punched me right in the heart. I swear to God.
Oh.
Thank you so much for those words. Go to H.E.L.P. PTSD. So Hotel Echo Lima Papa Papa Tango Sierra Delta.com. Get some more information about the program. You can see what's happening in your areas. Think about joining the program. Think about becoming part of it. And if not, think about at least helping it. Kelsey, it's been an absolute honor for me to have you on the show. I so appreciate you, again, being transparent and open and honest. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this episode is going to resonate with a lot of people. Really going to hit home. My name is Larry Payton. I have your 6. Please have mine.
Don't go away. There's so much left to do, so many things I wanna say, and I sing, hey, don't make the change. If it rains every single day, I'll fight to blow it all away.